Rockets and rocket-propelled guided missiles are the staple component of any modern military arsenal. By definition, rockets are unguided and follow the laws of physics and trajectory. Missiles are guided either remotely or internally, or on a pre-programmed or terrain-following path, such as the cruise missile. In fact, there is a missile for every occasion and every military platform. One-man carried and operated anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles, artillery and tank-fired anti-vehicle missiles, and fixed emplacement missiles. Helicopters and fighter aircraft can carry anti-tank, anti-ship, anti-aircraft, and even anti-satellite missile systems. Then there are ballistic missiles of varying range and caliber, frogs and scuds that follow a simple ballistic course from launch to target. Then there are the long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nuclear-tipped with multiple warheads, these are the most feared of all weapons systems and the subject of another episode. Ship and submarine-launched missiles are for defense against other ships, submarines, and aircraft. They can also launch the cruise missile, rocket-launched then powered by turbojets. They can cruise many thousands of kilometers to their target, either on land or at sea. Probably the most extreme of missile systems is the anti-missile missile. Capable of high velocities and quick reaction times, these missiles have the accuracy to intercept and destroy an incoming missile. The venerable gunpowder rocket has a long and distinguished heritage. Early Chinese documents record the use of fire arrows in warfare. By the year 1045 AD, the use of gunpowder and rockets formed an integral part of Chinese military tactics. It would seem that armies on the receiving end of these rocket attacks learned quickly, adopting this weapon into their own arsenals. The Mongols brought the rocket to Europe around 1241 AD. Rocket attacks preceded the fall of Baghdad. The army of King Louis IX was fired upon with rockets during the Seventh Crusade. During the 100 Years' War, the French army used rockets at the siege of Orléans against the English, and so on. In later centuries, inventors began to improve these rockets. One of the early successful improvements was by William Congreve, an established inventor who went on to manage the Royal Laboratory at Woolwich. The Congreve rocket was made up of an iron case of black powder for propulsion and either an explosive or incendiary head, and a wooden guide pole for stability. The original rocket design had the guide pole side-mounted on the warhead. Later, in 1815, it was improved with a base plate and threaded hole. They could be fired up to 3 kilometers, although fairly inaccurately. They had a tendency to detonate prematurely. They were more adept as a psychological weapon than a physical one. They were first used against the French fleet at Boulogne-sur-Mer in 1806, fired from specially converted boats, and at the attack on Copenhagen in 1807. Congreve himself commanded one such ship and was awarded the honorary rank of lieutenant colonel. They were used throughout the Napoleonic Wars, although a specialist rocket troop was not formed until 1812, first seeing action at the Battle of Leipzig. But it was at the siege of Fort McHenry on September 13 and 14, 1814, that the rocket gained notoriety. A British armada of 19 ships attacked the harbor of Baltimore, among them the Erebus, formerly a 20-gun sloop. She had been converted to a rocket battery vessel equipped with 20 414.5-kilogram rocket batteries. They were fired from below the main deck through small scuttles or portholes. After assaulting the fort for over 25 hours, the Congreve rockets loaded with an incendiary charge did little damage, although 4 deaths were reported. It was these Congreve rockets, witnessed by a young lawyer named Francis Scott Key, that so impressed him to add the words "rocket's red glare" in his poem, The Star-Spangled Banner. William Hale, 1797 to 1870, another English inventor, saw the failings of the Congreve rocket and set about improving the stability of the rocket in flight to increase its accuracy. Like a bullet from a rifled barrel, he spun the rocket by using its exhaust gases. After various designs, he settled on 3 angled vanes protruding into the exhaust, deflecting a portion of the escaping gases and forcing it to spin, thereby stabilizing its trajectory. His patent was awarded in 1844, and the Hale gunpowder war rocket, also called the stickless rocket, was put into service. The Americans adopted the technology, and in 1847, during the Mexican-American War, a rocket battery was used against Mexican forces at the siege of Veracruz and in the capture of the fortress of Chapultepec, leading to the surrender of Mexico City. With the rise of modern warfare came new inventions and technology no less impressive than the aeroplane. With the introduction of these vehicles into the battlefield, it was not long before they were armed with machine guns, bombs, and eventually, rockets. Air-to-air rockets were first used in the First World War. Specifically, they were unguided incendiary rockets, their target observation balloons and zeppelins. Developed by French inventor Lieutenant Yves Le Prieur, they were attached to the interwing struts of aircraft such as the Nieuport 11 and the Sopwith Camel. Electrically fired in sequence, they had a limited range of 115 meters. They were effective against observation balloons, but were never able to down an airship. The rocket was phased out by 1918 and replaced with tracer and incendiary bullets. Development of the RS-82 and RS-132 rockets began as early as 1929. Rail-launched, the smaller RS-82 was fitted to many aircraft wings during the Second World War. Unguided, their success rate was very low, but the Russians did shoot down 2 Japanese fighters in August 20th, 1939. These rockets were also fitted to bombers for self-defense and in the air-to-ground role as well. Their derivatives, the M8 and M13 rockets, were utilized in the Katyusha rocket artillery. The German Luftwaffe employed the Nebelwerfer 42 ground-based rocket for air-to-air deployment aboard Messerschmitt Bf 109 and 110 and Focke-Wulf FW 190 fighters. They would engage the massed groups of US bombers in formation. However, these unguided rockets required the aircraft to launch them at 15 degrees above level flight, and aiming was difficult. Later, the Luftwaffe developed the R-4M rocket, which was the first practical anti-aircraft rocket. Principally, the missile was a 55mm tube with a 520-gram warhead of high explosives. 812mm long, with flip-out fins on the tail for stability, it had a range of 1,000 meters. Although unguided, the large warhead proved deadly if any contact was made with the target.
America's new and deadly versions of the rocket-firing plane are about to give a Sherman tank the works at the Dover, Delaware Army Airfield. A P-38